A sharp, twisting pain radiated from my stomach, feeling as though an invisible hand were wringing my internal organs dry. I pressed a hand against my abdomen and rested my forehead against the cold cubicle partition, trying to use deep breaths to ease the sudden wave of discomfort. It was already 9 p.m., and the executive administration floor of Vertex Technologies was still brightly lit. The clatter of keyboards and the humming of printers wove together into an exhausted symphony unique to corporate drones. To have all the meeting materials organized before the board of directors met tomorrow, I had been working non-stop for over 12 hours. I had skipped a proper lunch and dinner, making do with just a few saltine crackers. Stella, Mr. Hayes needs this document signed immediately. Take it up to him. My supervisor slammed a thick folder onto my desk, his tone carrying an unquestionable command. I looked up, my face likely as pale as a sheet of paper. He frowned, but clearly had no intention of letting me rest. Hurry up, Mr. Hayes is waiting. I nodded, grabbed the folder, and stood up. The spasms in my stomach made my vision go dark for a moment. From the administrative department to the top-floor CEO suite was only a 2-minute elevator ride, but right now it felt like crossing an endless mountain range. Carter Hayes, my husband. 3 years ago, I concealed my identity as the sole heiress to Vanguard Enterprises and married him under the guise of an ordinary working-class girl. I thought this was a way to protect our love, allowing him to drop his emotional baggage and prove himself through his own abilities. As a test and a sign of approval, my father handed Vertex Technologies, a rapidly growing subsidiary under the Vanguard umbrella, over to Carter with full executive control. Meanwhile, I entered the company as a regular administrative intern, wanting to stay quietly by his side through the toughest early days of his startup journey. I thought that for these 3 years, doing all his laundry, cooking his meals, and handling every household chore so he could fight for his career without any worries was love. I thought that hiding all my brilliance and willingly acting as the unremarkable shadow behind him was also love. That was until the elevator doors dinged open. I dragged my heavy footsteps and pushed open the heavy, solid oak door to the CEO suite, which had been left slightly ajar. The office was lit only by a dim, warm floor lamp. Carter was not there. On the massive mahogany desk, amidst mountains of paperwork, sat a delicate white porcelain plate. On the plate rested an elegantly crafted French opera cake, draped in a glossy dark chocolate glaze and adorned with gold leaf. One look, and I knew it came from the most exclusive patisserie in Manhattan. It was my absolute favorite flavor. My heart softened uncontrollably for a second. Perhaps he still remembered my preferences. Did he leave this specifically for me? The hunger in my stomach intensified, teased by the sweet, rich aroma. I set the documents down and, as if possessed, picked up the small silver fork resting on the edge of the plate. Carefully, I sliced off a tiny corner. The cake melted in my mouth. The rich, dark chocolate mixed with the slight bitterness of espresso and the crispness of the almond sponge cake instantly soothed my exhausted nerves and empty stomach. Just as I prepared to take a second bite, the office door was violently shoved open. A sharp wave of perfume rushed in, accompanied by the urgent clicking of high heels slamming against the hardwood floor. "What the hell are you doing?" A shrill female voice stabbed into my eardrums like a poison-laced blade. Before I even had time to look up, a gust of wind hit me. Smack! A crisp, resounding slap landed viciously on my left cheek. The force was so immense that my entire body jolted. My ears rang, and the metallic taste of blood instantly bloomed in my mouth. I clutched my face, staring at the intruder in disbelief. It was Carter's executive secretary, Chloe Benson. She wore a tightly tailored red designer dress and immaculate makeup, but right now, her beautiful face was twisted with ferocious anger and undisguised contempt. "What are you looking at?" Seeing my lack of reaction, her fury seemed to multiply. She raised her hand and struck again. Smack! This time, on my right cheek. A burning pain exploded symmetrically across my face. My vision began to blur. "You low-class trash! Who gave you the nerve to touch Mr. Hayes's things? How dare you lick my man's plate? What kind of garbage do you think you are? Why don't you take a look in the mirror?" Her insults hailed down like ice, every word dripping with vicious humiliation. The phrase "my man" acted like a toxic needle, popping the last pathetic illusion of warmth in my heart. Just then, the office door opened again. Carter's tall figure appeared in the doorway. He had just finished a video conference, a trace of fatigue on his face. Seeing the scene inside, he froze for a moment. "Carter," I reached out as if grasping for a lifeline, my voice trembling slightly from the pain and shock. I thought that, no matter what, he would stand up for justice for me. However, he merely frowned. His gaze swept over my swollen red face without a single trace of heartache. Instead, his eyes landed on Chloe's slightly reddened hand. The look in his eyes held no defense for me, only deep impatience and disgust. What is going on here? Stop making a scene. Do you have no shame? His voice was ice cold, and the target of his reprimand was actually me. Chloe instantly shifted into the role of a wronged victim. She threw herself into his arms, her voice so sickeningly sweet it could drip syrup. Carter, look at her! I had the bakery make you a late-night snack, and the second it arrived, she stole it. She is so disgusting. Who knows if her hands are clean or if she carries diseases? I didn't steal it, I tried to explain, but my voice was ruthlessly cut off by Carter. Shut up. He glared at me, his eyes looking at a pile of revolting garbage. So what if you ate it? It is not a big deal. Apologize to Chloe right now. Apologize? He wanted me to apologize to a woman who had just slapped me, hurled insults at me, and openly referred to my husband as her man? I looked at him. I looked at the triumphant, provocative glare the woman in his arms threw my way. I felt the blood in my entire body freeze. I watched as Carter pulled a wet wipe from his pocket. He did not hand it to me to wipe the blood from the corner of my mouth. Instead, he meticulously, finger by finger, wiped the hand Chloe had just used to strike me. His tone carried a tenderness I had never heard before. Your hand is red. Does it hurt? Why waste your anger on a low-class nobody with no upbringing? It is not worth it. This scene was like a red-hot branding iron, searing fiercely into my heart, burning the ridiculous word love into a bloody, mutilated joke. 3 years of sacrifice and endurance had bought me the titles of low-class trash and a nobody with no upbringing. I laughed. First, a silent curl of my lips, and then the laughter grew louder, carrying a trace of hysterical sorrow. My stomach no longer hurt. My face no longer hurt. Because my heart had already shattered into a landscape of freezing ruins. Carter and Chloe looked baffled by my laughter. Carter's face grew even darker. Are you insane? Stella Vanguard. I am ordering you to apologize to Chloe immediately, and then get the hell out. I stopped laughing. I slowly raised my head, my gaze calmly passing right through them to look out the window at the Vanguard Enterprises headquarters building, standing like a brilliantly illuminated behemoth in the Manhattan night sky. Enough. This play I wrote and directed, titled Ordinary Love, has finally reached its curtain call. My calmness seemed to unsettle Carter even more than my hysteria. A flash of irritation crossed his eyes. He took a step forward, looking down at me from his towering height, the oppressive weight in his tone practically freezing the air. Stella, are you deaf? I told you to apologize. He repeated every word as if squeezing them through his teeth, carrying a superiority of absolute control. In his eyes, the wife who had no family and relied entirely on him for a living was nothing more than a pet he kept, one that must exhibit absolute obedience. Chloe leaned against his side, crossing her arms, her chin tilted slightly upward. She stared at me with the disdainful posture of a victor. The smugness in her eyes seemed to scream, "Look, this is the gap between you and me. Your husband's heart and everything he owns now belong to me." I ignored Carter's roaring. I did not look at Chloe's nauseating face either. I simply and methodically pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was a plain, unremarkable black smartphone, an outdated model issued to the company's interns. Seeing my action, Carter scoffed. What? Want to call someone to cry about it? Let me tell you, Stella, you have no family in this city. You have no one to rely on but me. If you do not apologize today, you will pack your things and get out of my apartment immediately. Chloe chimed in with a shrill, mocking laugh. Oh, she wants to make a phone call? Are you calling a women's shelter? Or the cops? Are you going to tell them you got slapped for stealing food? You are a literal joke. Their mockery buzzed in my ears like two annoying flies. I remained completely unmoved. My finger swiped across the screen, locating a contact with no name, only a golden Vanguard star logo. Only 5 people in the world had this number. It connected directly to the internal secure line of the highest seat of power at Vanguard Enterprises. It was never busy, 24 hours a day. I pressed dial. The call connected almost instantly. No ringback tone, no hold music, just a steady, authoritative baritone voice coming through the receiver, carrying a hint of concern. Stella, it is so late. Did something happen? It was my father, Richard Vanguard. I took a deep breath, pushing all the grievance, pain, and disappointment deep into my throat. When I spoke, my voice was as cold as an Alaskan glacier, devoid of any emotion. Dad. That simple address made Carter and Chloe freeze for a second across from me. Then, even thicker mockery spread across their faces. Dad? Ha ha ha! Chloe laughed so hard she trembled. Carter, did you hear that? She is calling someone dad. She is an orphan. Where did she get a dad? Did I slap the brains out of her head? Carter also found it utterly absurd. He crossed his arms, watching me with amused leisure, as if watching a terrible solo theatrical performance. Stella, stop putting on a ghost show. My patience is wearing thin. I ignored their noise and spoke into the phone using the most concise, clear language possible. The CEO of Vertex Technologies, Carter Hayes, and his secretary, Chloe Benson. Fire them immediately. My voice was not loud, but in the quiet CEO suite, it struck like a clap of thunder. The other end of the line went silent for 2 seconds. Then, my father's voice sounded again, carrying the decisive weight of a thunderbolt. Understood. Did they bully you? Yes. I said a single word. My father's voice revealed the calm right before a hurricane. I am sending the head of legal and the director of security to handle it personally. Stand exactly where you are and wait for me. I hung up the phone. The entire process took less than 30 seconds. Carter and Chloe were already laughing so hard they were bent over. Fire me? Ha ha ha. Carter acted as if he had just heard the joke of the century. Stella, do you even know who I am? I am the CEO of Vertex Technologies. I built this company with my own 2 hands. Who do you think you are? The chairman of Vanguard Enterprises? You think you can fire me with one phone call? Chloe covered her mouth, practically crying from laughing. Oh, I can't breathe. Carter, your wife is too funny. Has she been watching too many soap operas? She actually thinks she is some billionaire boss. Oh, fire us? I am so scared. I did not argue with them. I just quietly watched Carter, watching his face contort in his hysterical laughter. 10 seconds. I counted silently in my head. When I reached 10, an urgent, piercing ringtone slashed through the mocking air of the office. It was Carter's private cell phone. His laughter came to an abrupt halt. Looking a bit irritated, he pulled out his phone, glanced at the caller ID, and his face changed slightly. Flashing on the screen was the name David Sterling. He was the global head of human resources for Vanguard Enterprises, reporting directly to the chairman's office. Carter did not dare delay. He cleared his throat and answered the call, his tone instantly becoming respectful. Mr. Sterling! It is so late, what can I do for? His words were cut off by a rapid-fire barrage from the other end of the line. Although I could not hear exactly what David Sterling was saying, I watched as Carter's face transitioned at a visible speed over the span of a few seconds from respectful to confused to shocked and finally to dead, ashen gray. His mouth hung slightly open, his eyes wide as saucers. A fine layer of cold sweat began to seep from his forehead. The hand holding the phone began to tremble uncontrollably. Chloe was still oblivious to the situation. She shook Carter's arm, acting cute. Carter, who is calling? Hang up quickly. We need to deal with this crazy woman first. Shut up. Carter violently threw her hand off, his voice hoarse as he tried to defend himself to the person on the phone. No, Mr. Sterling, there must be a misunderstanding here. I didn't. This is impossible. On what grounds? The voice on the other end seemed to grow even harsher. Finally, it was as if all the strength had been drained from Carter's body. He froze completely. His pupils lost focus. His lips trembled, but he could not utter a single word. Clack. His brand-new, astronomically expensive phone slipped from his powerless fingers, hitting the carpet with a dull thud. The entire office instantly sank into a deathly silence. The smile on Chloe's face froze. She looked uneasily at the completely devastated Carter. Carter? What is wrong? What happened? What did Mr. Sterling say? Carter did not answer her. Very slowly, extremely stiffly, he turned his head. With a look one might reserve for a ghost, he stared at me, dead on. His eyes were filled with extreme horror, fear, and a completely incomprehensible bewilderment. Meeting his gaze, I slowly raised my hand to touch my still swollen, burning cheek. The corners of my mouth curled into a cold arc. The game begins. The air seemed to solidify into fragile, transparent glass. Carter's terror-stricken face was the most glaring crack on that glass. He stared at me, his lips parting and closing a few times, yet he was like a duck being strangled, unable to produce a single sound. Chloe finally realized something was very wrong. She shook Carter's arm hard, her voice taking on a crying tone. Carter, say something. What is going on? What did Mr. Sterling say? Carter acted as if her voice had shocked him awake. He gave a violent shudder, his eyes focusing, yet still locked entirely onto me. His Adam's apple bobbed violently. Finally, he squeezed a few words through his teeth, his voice as dry as sandpaper grinding on stone. Who the hell are you? He had asked this same question at our wedding 3 years ago. Back then, his eyes were full of love, and I was shy and timid. Now, the exact same question carried nothing but freezing fear. I didn't answer him. Explaining things to someone who is about to be eliminated from the board is completely unnecessary. You know David Sterling? He seemed to grab onto a crucial detail, his voice suddenly spiking. No. How could you possibly know Mr. Sterling? Stella Vanguard. Vanguard. His brain was spinning at hyperspeed, trying to find a rational explanation for this incomprehensible scenario. I could see all sorts of guesses flashing through his eyes. Doubt, shock, terror. And then, he seemed to figure something out. The extreme fear faded, replaced by a complex expression mixed with anger and sudden realization. I get it now. He suddenly began to sneer, pointing at me, his voice recovering a fraction of its CEO bravado. You are part of the Vanguard family from corporate, aren't you? No wonder your last name is Vanguard. You are some distant, broke relative of the chairman. I raised an eyebrow, watching him with immense amusement. When the human brain faces a massive shock beyond its comprehension, it subconsciously twists and downgrades the information into a version it can understand and accept. Carter was clearly doing just that, making him believe that the wife he had lived with day and night for 3 years was the princess of Vanguard Enterprises, a figure he did not even have the right to look up to, would utterly destroy his ego. Therefore, he preferred to believe that I was just a distant, poor relative who had some high-level connections but whose status was still beneath his. You think you can take me down relying on a little nepotism? His confidence rapidly returned under his logical deduction. Let me tell you. Stella Vanguard. Vertex Technologies was built by Carter Hayes' own hands. On what grounds can those old men at corporate suspend me with one sentence? Just because a distant relative who has nothing to do with anything filed a complaint? What an absolute joke! He grew more agitated as he spoke, as if completely convincing himself. I know what this is. Corporate is doing some compliance crackdown recently, and they want to make an example out of me. You think you can ride their coattails to scare me? Watching him engage in this self-hypnosis to forcefully save his own face, I actually found it laughable. This was the man I once loved, a man whose worldview was so small he did not even have the courage to face the truth. He turned to Chloe, comfortingly patting her back, his tone recovering its previous arrogance. Do not be afraid, Chloe. It is just a minor scene. I will go communicate with headquarters. As for now, his gaze shifted back to me, turning vicious. As for you, Stella Vanguard, since you refuse to take the easy way out, do not blame me for disregarding our marital ties. He aggressively grabbed the intercom on his desk and dialed security directly. Send 4 guards up to my office immediately. Yes, right now. Slamming the phone down, he braced both hands on the desk and leaned forward, staring at me with the eyes of a hungry wolf. You wanted to fire me? I am firing you first. I am officially notifying you. Administrative intern Stella Vanguard is suspected of stealing corporate trade secrets. From this moment on, you are officially terminated from Vertex Technologies. Chloe snapped back to reality, immediately playing along and shrieking, Yes, fire her! I saw her sneaking around flipping through your files just now. We cannot let a corporate spy like her get away. And just like that, the massive accusation of stealing trade secrets was lightly tossed onto my head. Soon, 4 tall security guards in uniform rushed into the room. The head of security asked with a stern face, Mr. Hayes, what are your orders? Carter pointed a finger at me, his expression fierce. Throw this woman out! She has been fired. From now on, she is banned from stepping foot in the Vertex Technologies building. Hearing this, the guards immediately surrounded me. Chloe crossed her arms, the vicious and satisfied smile returning to her face. She walked right up to me, bent down, and used a voice only the 2 of us could hear. You little bitch, still trying to fight me? Do you see it now? In this building, Carter is God. Your pathetic little background means absolutely nothing. I sat in the massive leather CEO chair, facing the advancing guards and the 2 ugly faces in front of me, feeling not a single ripple of emotion in my heart. Slowly, I pulled out that black smartphone again. Carter assumed I was going to call Dad again, and scoffed disdainfully. It is useless, Stella. A friend far away can't help you now. Today, I am going to have you thrown out like a dog in front of the entire company. I didn't make a phone call. Instead, I unlocked the screen, opened an encrypted communication app, and sent a text to a group chat labeled Platinum Legal Team. Vertex Technologies CEO Carter Hayes is resisting the suspension order from corporate, illegally detaining official corporate documents using his subsidiary executive authority, fabricating facts, and attempting to violently expel an internal corporate inspector. Evidence secured. Hitting send, I looked up, met Carter's deeply satisfied gaze, and smiled slightly. Mr. Hayes, are you sure you want to do this? Cut the crap, throw her out. He waved his hand aggressively, issuing his final command to the guards. Two guards, one on the left and one on the right, reached out to grab my arms. I remained sitting steadily, looking at Carter as I softly said, "Stop. It truly is too easy on a person like you. I originally just wanted you to leave with some dignity. Since you insist on throwing your face away, then let us play a real game. I am going to make you spit out every single cent you secretly funneled out of my family, out of Vanguard Enterprises, and out of Vertex Technologies over the last 3 years with interest, cleanly and completely." My voice was very light, but it struck Carter's heart like a sledgehammer. The smugness on his face instantly froze. His pupils violently contracted. The cat-and-mouse game has officially begun. I put my phone away and looked at the two hands that were about to touch my body. It was time to show them what true privilege looked like. Two rough, massive hands carrying undeniable force. Their captain of the security team had an expressionless face, his eyes revealing a professional coldness. Clearly, in his eyes, I was just a problem that needed to be disposed of. Chloe stood to the side, her smile practically spilling over her lips. She even pulled out her phone, seeming ready to record the glorious moment of my pathetic ejection. She leaned into Carter's ear, her voice just loud enough for me to hear. "Carter, look at her, still putting on an act. She really will not shed a tear until she sees the coffin. Let's have the guards throw her next to the dumpsters outside the front door, take a picture, and post it to the company group chat. Let's see how she shows her face in public after that." Carter said nothing, but the cruel smirk on his lips indicated his silent approval. Just as those two hands were about to touch the collar of my shirt, I moved. My movement was not fast. In fact, it could be described as methodical. I simply raised my right hand and reached into the inner breast pocket of my cheap administrative uniform jacket. The guards paused for a fraction of a second, thinking I was going to pull out a weapon to resist. Carter and Chloe also cast curious glances my way. What I pulled out of my pocket was not a phone nor a weapon. It was a small, pitch-black, cool-to-the-touch metal insignia badge. The badge was roughly half the size of a palm, shaped as an abstract Vanguard star. The surface had a matte finish, reflecting no light, but under the office lamps, you could see a unique, one-of-a-kind serial number laser engraved onto it, along with a microscopic Vanguard seal. This was the identification badge of a Supreme Corporate Inspector for Vanguard Enterprises. The black titanium insignia. Across the entire global conglomerate, fewer than 3 people possessed this badge. It represented the absolute will of the chairman of the board. The bearer possessed the right to act first and report later, able to interrogate and penalize any subsidiary and any employee within the Vanguard umbrella, anywhere, anytime. When Vertex Technologies was first established, the captain of the security team had been transferred over from the Special Operations Division of Vanguard's Corporate Security Department. He was an old veteran. He might not recognize my face, but there was absolutely no way he did not recognize this badge. I didn't speak. I simply placed the black titanium badge gently onto the mahogany desk, then used my index finger to slide it right in front of the security captain. The captain's gaze fell upon the badge. At first, it was just a casual glance, but in the next second, his pupils constricted violently, as if he had been struck by a high-voltage current. His body gave a massive jolt. He stared dead at the badge, the cold professionalism on his face crumbling into dust instantly. It was replaced by a shock and reverence that emanated from his very bones. His breathing grew heavy. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief and stared again. The matte black star, the familiar serial number, the tiny Vanguard seal, every single detail told him this was no hallucination. This is. His voice began to tremble, unable to form a complete sentence. Do I need to explain myself further? I spoke coolly, my voice remaining calm. Thud. Under the eyes of Carter and Chloe, whose eyeballs were about to pop out of their heads, the 6'3" security captain, built like a bear, actually went weak in the knees and dropped straight down to the floor. No, he didn't fall. He knelt. He knelt to the badge. He lowered his head, his body trembling slightly from fear, and spoke in a tone bordering on sheer panic. I had no idea who you were. Please forgive me, ma'am. I offended the Supreme Inspector. Please forgive me, ma'am. The other 3 younger guards didn't recognize the badge, but seeing their captain acting like this scared the living daylights out of them. They quickly followed suit, dropping to their knees with a series of thuds, not even daring to breathe too loudly. The entire CEO suite instantly fell into a bizarre, deathly silence. The muscles on Carter's face were twitching violently. He looked at the guards kneeling on the floor, then at the inconspicuous black badge on the desk, and finally turned his gaze to me. The horror in his eyes could no longer be described with words. Inspector? He muttered to himself. To him, that word belonged to a legend from another universe. Chloe was scared, totally pale, every ounce of blood draining from her face. She subconsciously took 2 steps back, hiding behind Carter, looking at me as if she had just seen a demon. I ignored them. I looked at the security captain kneeling on the floor, my voice dropping a few degrees. Now, do you know what to do? The captain reacted as if receiving a royal pardon. He sprang up from the floor, gave a textbook military salute, spun around, and shot a vicious glare at his subordinates who were still kneeling. He roared, "Get up! Protect the inspector!" The 4 guards instantly stood, their movements synchronized, and positioned themselves behind me to form a human wall, glaring aggressively at Carter and Chloe. The entire situation had violently inverted in the span of 3 seconds. I stood up gracefully, walked around the desk, and step by step, slowly approached the still stunned Chloe. My high heels made no sound on the carpet, yet it felt as though every step was stomping directly on her heart. She was terrified. Her body uncontrollably shrank back. "You. Stay away from me." I stopped right in front of her, staring coldly at her face, which was plastered with expensive cosmetics. "Which hand hit me just now?" I asked softly. Chloe instinctively hid both her hands behind her back, her lips quivering, unable to say a word. "Not gonna speak?" I smiled. Then I raised my hand. Smack! Smack! 2 more slaps, heavier and more ruthless than the ones she had dealt me. The force sent her stumbling, and blood instantly appeared at the corner of her mouth. "You." She covered her face, her eyes filled with humiliation and toxic resentment. "This is returning your favor." I shook my slightly numb hand, my voice devoid of emotion. "Now, let's calculate the interest." Saying that, I raised my hand again. Smack! Smack! Another 2 crisp, resounding slaps. She saw stars, lost her footing, and collapsed hard onto the carpet. "This slap is me teaching you on behalf of my husband what it means to be a shameless homewrecker seducing a married man. This slap is on behalf of every hardworking employee at Vertex Technologies, punishing you for being a useless parasite throwing your weight around." I looked down from above at her collapsed, disheveled form. There was no pity in my eyes. "Carter!" Chloe finally broke down. She cried and screamed, begging Carter to save her. "Save me! She's hitting me!" Carter woke up as if from a dream. A flash of explosive rage crossed his eyes. He lunged forward and roared, "Stella, you dare!" However, he barely made it 2 steps before the security captain and another guard clamped down on his arms like iron vises, rendering him completely immobile. "Let go of me, you bastards, I am the CEO." Carter struggled frantically, but he could not shake off those iron hands. I did not look at that pathetic couple again. I walked straight back to the CEO chair and sat down elegantly. I picked up the intercom on the desk, my voice clearly broadcasting through the room. "Administration? This is Stella Vanguard. Send out a notice. Carter Hayes and Chloe Benson have been officially terminated by the corporate group for severe disciplinary violations. Effective immediately, I am taking control of the CEO suite. Also, call the janitorial staff to come clear the garbage out of here." Having said that, I hung up the phone. I shifted my gaze to Carter, who was still violently cursing while pinned by the guards, and to Chloe, who was weeping pathetically on the floor. "Did you hear that?" I said mildly. "You are being swept out the door." The office doors opened. 2 janitors pushed their cleaning cart in. Seeing the highly volatile situation inside, they stopped in their tracks, terrified and unsure of what to do. I smiled warmly at them. "Don't be afraid. Just clean up the garbage on the floor." My gaze pointedly swept over Chloe on the carpet. The security captain understood. He gave his men a look. 2 guards stepped forward, grabbed the still weeping Chloe by the arms like a dead dog, and with absolutely no regard for chivalry, dragged her out of the office. Her screams and curses echoed down the hallway, slowly fading away. "Stella Vanguard, you poisonous bitch. You will die a horrible death." Carter's eyes looked ready to burst. He struggled with everything he had, the veins on his neck bulging like coiled vipers. "You think you can take me down with a broken piece of metal? Keep dreaming. Vertex Technologies is mine. You just wait." I was too lazy to waste any more words on him. I waved a hand at the security captain. "Escort him out. Let him go, have a slow chat with the corporate legal team." Carter was forcefully dragged out as well. His unwilling roars finally vanished behind the heavy oak door. The world was finally quiet. I leaned back into the massive leather chair, closed my eyes, and let out a long breath. My face still burned with pain, but the foul anger I had suppressed for 3 years was finally partially released. But this was only the appetizer. I opened my eyes, my gaze turning sharp again. I opened Carter's private laptop on the desk and typed in a supreme-level administrative override password known only to my father and me. The screen flickered, instantly bypassing all the firewalls and user passwords, granting me access to the system backend. What I was looking for was not the chat logs of his romantic affairs, but something far more lethal: money. I pulled up all of Vertex Technologies' financial statements, corporate ledger transactions, and major contract approval records from the last 3 years. A massive sea of data unfolded before my eyes. I launched the backend AI filtering program and set a few keywords: related party transactions, abnormal premiums, Horizon. Full name: Horizon Future Innovations. It was a small company established only a year ago. I had accidentally overheard Carter mention this name while he was on the phone at home. I didn't pay much attention then, but a woman's intuition told me there was dirty business involved. Quickly, the filtered results appeared. Looking at the clear records line by line on the screen, my heart sank inch by inch. A bone-chilling cold rose from the soles of my feet. Carter was even more greedy and shameless than I had imagined. Starting a year ago, he used his executive power as CEO to license several of Vertex Technologies' most core and valuable AI algorithms and chip design patents to Horizon Future Innovations under the guise of technical cooperation. He priced them far below market value, virtually giving them away for free. In return, Horizon Future Innovations paid a seemingly reasonable licensing fee that was actually a fraction of what the patents were worth. The money entered Vertex Technologies' books, making everything look flawless on the surface. But the real trick lay in the fact that Carter simultaneously used his position to establish massive R&D projects and marketing budgets. He funneled large sums of Vertex Technologies' liquid capital to a group of suppliers designated by Horizon Future Innovations under the pretense of project payouts. Without exception, all of these suppliers were newly established shell companies with obscure backgrounds. After the funds cycled through these shell companies, the vast majority flowed into several private offshore bank accounts. It was a meticulously designed scheme to hollow out Vertex Technologies. On one side, he transferred the company's core assets, the patents, to shell companies under his actual control. On the other side, he laundered the company's operating capital overseas through fake projects. Once Vertex Technologies was completely hollowed out and turned into an empty shell devoid of core technology, he could kick me to the curb at any time, take those patents and massive funds, and fly away to a happily ever after with Chloe. Using Horizon Future Innovations as his new disguise, he would magically transform into a true rising star in the business world. What a brilliant bait and switch. Pulling the rug right out from under us, my fingers flew across the cold keyboard, pulling up Horizon Future Innovations' corporate registration data. The legal representative was a name I did not recognize. But as I dug deeper into the hidden shareholders and actual controllers, Chloe Benson's name was glaringly present. Furthermore, the beneficiary of the largest anonymous trust fund behind it pointed directly to Carter Hayes himself. So, the dessert I thought my husband had saved to reward me was actually him celebrating his impending grand success. And I, the fool kept entirely in the dark, was just the final, most obnoxious stumbling block on his path to glory. I bundled all the wire transfer records, patent licensing contracts, and fund flow charts, encrypted them, and sent them to my private email and the Platinum Legal team's public inbox. Having done all this, I felt a deep wave of exhaustion. It wasn't physical fatigue, but an exhaustion of the soul. I once believed I had married an ambitious, capable man with great potential. I never expected him to be an ungrateful wolf, a parasite latching onto the massive ship of Vanguard Enterprises to suck it dry. Right then, my personal phone vibrated. It was a priority notification from Instagram. I clicked it open. It was a new post from Chloe. In the photo, she was sitting in the passenger seat of a brand new red Ferrari. On her lap sat an Hermes Birkin bag. On her finger, she wore a massive, blindingly bright 10-carat diamond ring. Though her face still bore the faint marks of my slap, her eyes were full of provocation and showing off. The caption read, "Some people can wear the crown and still look like a peasant, while some people are born to own everything. Thank you to my amazing man for taking out the trash. Our new life is about to begin." Beneath the post was a like from Carter, along with a sickeningly sweet comment. "My queen deserves the best in the world." The location tag showed the city's most elite luxury jewelry boutique. It seemed that after being thrown out of the company, they didn't lay low at all. Instead, they doubled down, flaunting the money they stole from Vertex Technologies to put on a show for me. Looking at the blinding photo, I laughed out of pure fury. Stupid. Absolutely stupid to the extreme. They thought I had only temporarily reclaimed an office. They didn't realize that from the moment I flashed my badge, they were already rats trapped in a jar. I held my phone. I didn't reply, nor did I leave a like. I simply opened another app, a highly encrypted portal directly connecting to the ultra VIP services of the world's top-tier banks. I entered my exclusive code and biometric data, logging into the Vanguard family's wealth management backend. The interface clearly displayed all associated global assets for myself and Carter as a legally married couple. This included every single credit card, brokerage account, and wealth management portfolio under his name. I found the limitless black cards he was currently using, as well as the supplementary cards held by Chloe. Then, I pressed a red button on the screen. Reason: suspected malicious transfer of marital assets and suspected major corporate embezzlement by associated parties. Requesting emergency freeze of all following associated accounts and supplementary cards. Applicant: Stella Vanguard. Authorization level: Supreme. Execute operation. Effective immediately. The moment I clicked confirm, I could almost picture it. On the other side of the city, inside that resplendent luxury boutique, Carter and Chloe standing in front of the credit card terminal, staring at the transaction declined. Account frozen prompt. The spectacular look on their faces as they plummeted from heaven straight to hell. Carter, Chloe, enjoy your final moments of madness to the fullest. Because starting from the very next second, you won't even be able to scrounge up the cash to buy a cup of coffee. Inside the dazzling Cartier flagship boutique, the atmosphere had plunged into a suffocating awkwardness. Sir, I am so sorry. This card has also been declined. The young sales associate still maintained her professional smile, but her eyes already revealed an imperceptible trace of disdain. This was the fifth card Carter had tried. Chloe's smug smile had long vanished, replaced by a trace of panic and embarrassment. The $10 million diamond ring she hadn't even paid for yet, which she had proudly put on her finger to show off, now felt like a branding iron. Several wealthy socialites shopping nearby were already casting entertained glances their way. How is this possible? Carter's face turned the color of bruised liver. He lowered his voice, roaring into his phone at his bank's VIP client manager. Every single one of my cards is frozen. What the hell are you people doing? I am your top-tier VIP. The client manager's voice came through, respectful but utterly helpless. Mr. Hayes, I am very sorry. We just received a supreme directive from the Global Risk Control Center. All of your accounts have been temporarily frozen due to a high-risk asset review. This is a directive from the International Joint Risk Control Board. Our branch has absolutely no authority to lift it. Carter's brain buzzed. He instantly thought of me. Stella Vanguard. It had to be that bitch playing tricks. He hung up, shaking with anger, but he quickly forced himself to calm down. He remained stubbornly convinced that I was just a distant relative with a bit of background, and that my connections were limited. An account freeze of this level was at most a corporate financial audit. It wouldn't last long. Tonight's charity gala was the main event. It was the highest-level annual gathering of the city's tech and financial elites. Carter had long planned to use this gala to officially connect with Victor Thorne, the vice president of Obsidian Capital, a rival investment firm he had been secretly collaborating with. As long as he could get on Victor's good side and secure investment from Obsidian Capital, he could completely break free from Vanguard Enterprises' control and build up Horizon Future Innovations. By then, let alone a petty Stella Vanguard, even Vanguard Corporate wouldn't be able to touch him. Thinking of this, he forcefully suppressed the rage in his heart, pulled another phone from his pocket, and dialed a number. Hey, Jimmy? It's Carter Hayes. I need a bridge loan right now. Yes, wire it to this account within the hour. Do not worry about the interest rate. He was actually willing to borrow from a loan shark just to get through tonight. In the end, using newly deposited exorbitantly high-interest bridge funds, Carter humiliatingly purchased the diamond ring and 2 custom formal outfits. When he and Chloe walked out of the luxury boutique, they felt the mocking gazes burning into their backs like needles. Carter, what exactly is going on? How does that bitch have so much power? Chloe asked, still terrified once they were in the car. She is just a clown jumping around. Leaning on her status as a distant relative of the Vanguard family to pull some strings at corporate and give me a hard time. Carter lit a cigarette, analyzing the situation with feigned calm. Don't worry. Once I connect with Mr. Thorne tonight and get Obsidian Capital's backing, her little tricks won't mean a thing. When the time comes, I will make her get on her knees and beg me. Chloe finally relaxed, the look of yearning returning to her face. She fantasized about how she would look as the universally admired wife of the Horizon Future Innovations CEO at the gala, treating the humiliation at Cartier as nothing more than a minor hiccup before her grand success. Night fell, and the city lights flared to life. The Manhattan Grand Waterfront Hotel was studded with stars tonight. Top-tier luxury cars pulled up to the red carpet one by one, discharging titans who usually only grace the covers of financial magazines. Carter, wearing a brand-new Tom Ford suit, walked high-profile onto the red carpet with Chloe on his arm, who was decked out in a sequined mermaid gown. He worked hard to straighten his back, a confident smile plastered on his face, nodding at everyone he knew or didn't know, acting as if he were still the triumphant tech golden boy. However, he sharply sensed that the atmosphere was a bit off. Some partners who usually greeted him with immense enthusiasm merely gave polite nods today before quickly averting their eyes. Some heavyweights he tried to approach always found a seamless excuse to step away. Throughout the entire gala, he was treated like an isolated island, purposefully shunned by the mainstream circle. Carter, why are they all acting so weird? Chloe also noticed the anomaly, pulling uneasily at his sleeve. People in business are snobs. They probably caught wind of my suspension from corporate. Carter gritted his teeth and whispered, "Ignore them. Our target is Mr. Thorne." Halfway through the gala, the host announced that tonight's biggest surprise was that a representative from Vanguard Enterprises would attend in person and present a massive donation to the gala. Carter's heart tightened. Vanguard sent someone? Just as the entire room waited in eager anticipation, the massive gold double doors of the ballroom were slowly pushed open by the staff. A figure appeared in the doorway. At that moment, all the lights in the entire ballroom seemed to focus on that single person. Every conversation, every note of music, instantly ceased. I stood there, wearing a custom, hand-tailored black velvet gown designed specifically for me by a national treasure-level French designer. The design appeared simple, but every detail dripped with extreme, understated luxury. Across the gown, tens of thousands of top-tier black diamonds were hand-stitched into a dazzling galaxy. Under the lights, those diamonds shimmered with my every breath, as if I were wearing the entire midnight sky. This gown had a name. It was called Midnight Sky. It was the exclusive symbol of the matriarch of the Vanguard financial empire. I wore no exaggerated jewelry, only two small but brilliantly shining pink diamonds gracing my earlobes. My long hair was pinned into an elegant updo, revealing a slender neck. I wore just the right amount of light makeup, concealing the swelling from this morning, leaving only a pair of calm, deep eyes. Step by step, I slowly walked into the ballroom. Hundreds of elites, whether business tycoons or Wall Street sharks, stood up simultaneously from their seats the moment they saw me. Their faces bore expressions of respect, surprise, and even a trace of awe, paying me a silent tribute. This was not because of my beauty, but because of the unrivaled power and wealth I represented. Carter and Chloe, however, were frozen in place as if struck by a paralyzing spell. Carter's eyes were locked dead onto me, his mouth open wide enough to fit an egg. He might not recognize the origin of the gown, but he was not blind. He could see the shocking spectacle of every major player in the room standing up for me. He could feel that invisible, suffocating aura of absolute power. His mind went entirely blank. As for Chloe, her jealousy and shock had twisted her beautiful face into something monstrous. She looked at me as if looking at a demon crawling out of hell to steal everything she owned. I kept my eyes straight ahead, walking directly toward the main table. When passing Carter, I didn't even cast him a glance, treating him like air. Yet, the moment I brushed past him, I heard a sound from his throat, a murmur like the whimper of a dying beast, laced with endless fear and confusion. It's you? Yes, Carter, it is me. The woman you saw as nothing but a housewife who only knew how to spend money. The low-class trash you casually humiliated and trampled over. The stumbling block you were preparing to kick aside. Now, I am back. I am back to take everything that is mine and to pass judgment on everything that is yours. My appearance was like a depth charge dropped into a calm lake, stirring up invisible, massive waves across the gala. Everyone's eyes followed me, filled with inquiry, reverence, and curiosity. Carter and Chloe were the most pathetic, laughable little boats caught in this massive storm. After the extreme shock faded, Chloe's jealousy rapidly morphed into idiotic aggression. She probably couldn't accept this cruel reality. Her brain automatically filtered out all negative information, leaving only primal hostility. She glared at the priceless midnight sky gown I wore, a flash of disdain crossing her eyes. She quickly rushed forward, blocking my path, her shrill voice slicing through the silence of the room. "Stella Vanguard, you shameless woman, what are you doing here? Is a top-tier event like this a place someone like you can just sneak into? Where did you rent that dress? Even wearing a fake, you don't look like a socialite. What an absolute embarrassment." Her voice was very loud, ensuring everyone around could hear. She thought this would publicly rip off my mask and leave me with no place to hide. However, the moment the words left her mouth, she wasn't met with my anger, but with a collective gasp from the surrounding crowd, followed by suppressed chuckles. Some wealthy women looked at Chloe with eyes full of pity and mockery, looking at a clown who didn't know she was already dead. I couldn't even be bothered to speak. Just then, the host of the gala, the highly respected chairman of the Metro Chamber of Commerce, Arthur Winston, hurried over from the main table. His face was full of smiles, carrying even a trace of flattery. He bowed slightly toward me. "Miss Vanguard, your presence brings immense honor to our event. Forgive me for not greeting you at the door. Please forgive me." His posture was respectful to the absolute extreme. Then, he turned to the completely clueless Chloe, his face instantly turning dark. He barked, "And who are you? What kind of nonsense are you spouting here? The Midnight Sky Miss Vanguard is wearing was exclusively custom-made for the Vanguard family by the artistic director of Dior in Paris, a process taking 2 full years. It is the only one in the world. And you call it a fake? Ignorance truly breeds audacity." "Security." Chloe's face turned ghastly pale. She looked at Mr. Winston in disbelief, then at me. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't utter a single word. As for Carter, he stood frozen like he had been struck by lightning. Mr. Winston was a top-tier titan he had constantly tried to flatter but could never even get a word with. And now, this titan was bowing and scraping before me, calling me Miss Vanguard. His worldview began to violently fracture at that very moment. "Mr. Winston, it is fine," I said lightly, my voice not loud but carrying unquestionable authority. "This lady probably just has a narrow worldview and hasn't seen much of the real world. It is understandable." My casual comment was the most lethal humiliation. Chloe's face shifted from red to white, finally settling on a deep bruised purple. She looked ready to dig a hole and crawl into it. I paid her no more attention and, under Mr. Winston's personal guidance, walked toward the center table of the ballroom. Sitting there were the most heavyweight guests of the night. They all stood to greet me. I took my seat gracefully, while Carter and Chloe were ruthlessly left standing where they were, like 2 completely ignored jokes, enduring mocking stares from every direction. Carter's fists clenched fiercely at his sides, his fingernails digging into his flesh. He stared dead at my back. His eyes were filled with toxic resentment, unwillingness, and a trace of terror he refused to admit to himself. The climax of the gala was the charity auction. I didn't bid on anything. I simply sat quietly. Until the very end, when the host announced that, on behalf of Vanguard Enterprises, I was donating $15 million to the charity foundation. The entire room erupted in thunderous applause. I walked slowly onto the stage amidst the applause and took the microphone from the host. My calm gaze swept across the room, finally landing precisely on Carter's ashen face. "Good evening, everyone. I am Stella Vanguard." I gave a brief introduction, then shifted my tone. Vanguard Enterprises has always upheld the principles of integrity and mutual benefit. However, there are always some who try to break the rules and damage our interests. Here, I officially announce that, effective immediately, Vanguard Enterprises and all its subsidiaries will permanently terminate all cooperation with Summit Supply Chain, Velocity Logistics, Nova Advertising, and 4 other companies, placing them on our permanent blacklist. Every time I read a company's name, a small ripple of commotion stirred the crowd, and Carter's face grew a shade paler. Because the 7 companies I read were the core, most loyal suppliers he had personally propped up over the last few years. They were the foundation of his independent empire. Now, in front of the entire industry, I smashed his foundation to pieces with a single sentence. I saw that the bosses of those companies were also present in the room. The blood instantly drained from their faces, and they began pulling out their phones, likely to demand answers from Carter. Carter's phone was vibrating frantically in his pocket, but he didn't dare answer it. He could only watch helplessly as the network he had spent years building completely disintegrated into ash under my casual declaration. Furthermore, I paused, delivering the final blow to him. For any enterprise that attempts to do business with these blacklisted companies, Vanguard Enterprises will thoroughly reevaluate our partnership with you. This was a naked threat. I told everyone in the room, whoever dared to help Carter Hayes was an enemy of Vanguard Enterprises. Having done all this, I lowered the microphone, gave a slight nod to the audience, and walked off the stage amidst a dead silence and the complex gazes of everyone present. I didn't return to the main table. Instead, I walked straight toward the ballroom doors. When I passed Carter again, he finally couldn't help it. He lunged and grabbed my wrist. His hand was freezing cold and trembling. "Why?" He stared at me dead on, his voice as hoarse as a broken bellows. Stella Vanguard, what exactly are you trying to do? I slowly turned my head, looking into his bloodshot eyes. Softly, word by word, I said, I am not trying to do anything. I am just telling you, Carter. Those networks and that business empire you are so proud of, in my eyes, they are nothing more than a sandcastle I can crush with a flick of my finger. With that, I forcefully threw off his hand. The day after the charity gala, the entire business world exploded. Mysterious Vanguard heiress makes high-profile debut, blacklists 7 industry giants with 1 sentence. The headline dominated every financial news outlet. Though my photo was blurred, that midnight sky gown became a legend discussed by industry insiders. Carter, however, became the most pathetic protagonist in this legend. The news of his industry-wide banishment by Vanguard Enterprises spread like a virus. Overnight, he went from a universally praised tech golden boy to a plague everyone avoided. Partners terminated their contracts. Banks frantically called in his loans. Even the loan shark sent men to block the entrance to his house. The independent empire he painstakingly built collapsed overnight with a single word from me. As the other central figure in this storm, Chloe Benson's life was even worse. Labels like homewrecker, gold digger, and fake socialite stuck to her like glue. She was fired from the company, her credit cards were frozen, and she plummeted from the clouds straight into the mud. She tried to contact Carter, but discovered he was so overwhelmed he couldn't even care for himself, let alone her. In her desperation, Chloe resorted to her final trump card, public opinion. She was, after all, a minor influencer with several 100,000 followers on Instagram. She had meticulously curated an image of a fiercely independent, beautiful, and wealthy career woman. That night, Chloe started an Instagram live from her apartment. She purposefully wore no makeup, dressing in an oversized white dress shirt, her hair messy. The faint slap marks from the gala were still on her face. She cried to the camera, looking delicate and pitiful. Hey guys, I'm sorry I'm only talking to you now. These past few days, I have gone through the darkest moments of my life. She began to twist the truth, spinning a carefully fabricated story. In her narrative, she and Carter were deeply in love, fighting for their freedom. And I, Stella Vanguard, was the vicious original wife who used her family's filthy money to forcefully tear them apart. I admit I fell in love with Carter. That is my fault. But love itself isn't a crime, she sobbed. That woman doesn't love Carter at all. She married him for 3 years and treated him like garbage, acting like a bitter housewife. When Carter faced massive hurdles in his career, it was me who stayed by his side, encouraging him, supporting him. Now that Carter's business is finally succeeding, that woman jumps out. She uses her family's power to suppress us, to blacklist us, pushing us into a dead end. Just because she has money, does that mean she can do whatever she wants? Is there no justice left in this world? She cried her eyes out, acting with the skill of an Oscar winner. She didn't just freeze all of Carter's and my bank accounts. She paid people to smear me online, calling me a gold digger, calling me vain. I just want to ask one thing. Is it a crime to fall in love with an incredible man? The atmosphere in the live stream was instantly ignited. Some ignorant followers began frantically defending her. At that moment, I was sitting in a law firm, having a meeting with my legal team to discuss the final legal encirclement of Carter Hayes. My assistant reported Chloe's live stream to me. I looked at the screen, watching that woman's reality-twisting performance. I felt no anger, only amusement. Using public opinion to attack me? Did she forget that public opinion can also be controlled with money? Furthermore, the ironclad evidence I held could never be washed clean. I didn't even deign to argue with her personally. I simply said to my lead counsel, Robert, it is time to deliver the gift we prepared. Robert nodded, pushing up his glasses, a cold sharpness flashing behind the lenses. He handed an encrypted flash drive to the head of our PR team. Half an hour. Robert checked his watch and issued the command. I want this woman's name completely obliterated from the internet in 30 minutes. The PR head gave an okay gesture and immediately took his team to execute the order. Half an hour later, Chloe, who was still enjoying the worship of her followers in the live stream, feeling like she was about to become the #1 anti-capitalist influencer, had no idea that a storm capable of dragging her down to the 18th level of hell had quietly arrived. The first change occurred on the official accounts of major mainstream media outlets. Almost simultaneously, dozens of authoritative outlets published an in-depth exposé titled, The Truth Behind the Inspirational Influencer, Chloe Benson, Sex for Play Deals and Corporate Embezzlement. The article contained no superfluous commentary. It was pure, hard evidence. Part 1. Chloe's bank statements. They clearly showed that over the past 2 years, She received massive wire transfers every month from multiple married senior executives at Vertex Technologies, totaling millions of dollars. Every transfer corresponded to a problematic contract she helped the executive sign using her position as Carter's secretary. Part 2. High-definition security footage from hotels. The videos showed Chloe entering suites at a five-star hotel at different times with different men. The faces of those men were clearly the same executives who wired her money. Part 3. Her expense records, showing she used corporate accounts to buy luxury goods and sports cars, alongside the fraudulent reimbursement receipts she forged to line her own pockets. Every invoice was crystal clear. These three sets of evidence hit like sledgehammers, smashing Chloe's carefully crafted innocent persona to dust. When the links to these articles were spammed into Chloe's live stream by an army of internet bots, the entire chat exploded. The comments shifted instantly from "We feel so bad for you, Chloe" to a screen filled with vomit emojis and words like corporate hooker. Chloe watched the vile comments roll in, the blood instantly draining from her face. She screamed and tried to shut down the live stream, only to find her back-end access had been directly locked by the platform. All she could do was watch helplessly as her follower count dropped by tens of thousands every second, watching those followers who just worshipped her now curse her with the most toxic language imaginable. Then came the fatal blow. The video feed on her live stream was forcefully overridden, replaced by an audio clip playing to the thousands still watching. It was a conversation between Chloe and a man. "Man, baby, is the kid in your belly really Carter's?" Chloe giggled. "Of course not, babe. That idiot actually thinks I love him. Once he funnels all the money out of Vertex Tech and gets sent to prison by that Vanguard bitch, we'll take the money and fly overseas to live the good life. Man, aren't you afraid he'll find out?" Chloe sounded incredibly confident. "Relax. I calculated the days perfectly. When he slept with me, it was my safe period. This baby is 100% yours." I had bought this audio recording for $1 million from Carter's driver, Tommy Blake, who also happened to be Chloe's ex-boyfriend and current lover. When the audio finished playing, the entire internet fell into a deathly silence, followed by an even more violent eruption. Because too many angry netizens flooded the stream simultaneously, the live stream crashed and went to a black screen. The platform immediately issued a notice, permanently banning her account. A total internet ban. Chloe, the woman who tried to hijack public opinion to paint herself as a victim, was ultimately devoured alive by the flood of public outrage. Rumor had it that that very night, furious internet sleuths doxed her address. Her door was spray-painted with phrases like "shameless mistress" and "corporate whore." People threw rotten eggs at her windows. She experienced complete social death, and from beginning to end, I never said a single word. Because the most efficient way to deal with garbage is never to scream at it, but to toss it directly into the incinerator. Chloe's utter downfall did not serve as a wake-up call for Carter. Quite the opposite. It only hardened his resolve to fight me to the bitter end. In his mind, I orchestrated all of this behind the scenes. I was the one who used despicable tactics to destroy his true love and his top lieutenant. Blinded by hatred and frustration, he acted like a cornered beast, frantically searching for a way out. Just as he was running out of options and hitting walls everywhere, a medical lab report became his last lifeline. It was a checkup report Chloe had gotten before her exposure. It clearly stated, pregnancy, 6 weeks. Even though Chloe's audio recording had already proven the child belonged to someone else, Carter, in his desperation, chose self-deception. Armed with this proof of his heir, he found the one vulnerability he thought could utterly destroy me. My mother-in-law, his mother, Martha Hayes. Carter and I had been married for 3 years without having a child. Publicly, Carter claimed my health wasn't great and he didn't want me to suffer. Privately, Martha gave me endless dirty looks because of it. Now Carter took this pregnancy report to her, embellishing the story through tears. Martha exploded immediately. That afternoon, I was in my office processing an urgent M&A file. The door was shoved open by my panicked receptionist. "Miss Vanguard, a woman claiming to be your mother-in-law, insisted on forcing her way in. We couldn't stop her." Before she even finished speaking, a heavy-set older woman wearing a cheap blouse charged in like a cannonball. It was Martha Hayes. The second she walked in, she slammed a cheap faux leather purse onto my desk with a massive bang. "Stella Vanguard, you infertile hen. You still have the nerve to sit here?" Her opening line was the most vicious curse. Her face, twisted with anger, was filled with bitterness and spite. I frowned, gesturing for the pale receptionist to leave the room. Then I stood up, looking at her calmly. "Martha, why are you here?" "Spit. Who is your Martha?" "I don't have such a venomous daughter-in-law." Martha pointed right at my nose, spit flying from her mouth. You can't have kids yourself, so you can't stand it when someone else does? Chloe is pregnant with the Hayes family's seed, and you use those dirty tricks to ruin a perfectly good girl. What is wrong with your heart? Are you trying to end the Hayes bloodline? She grew more agitated as she spoke, even looking ready to lunge and tear at my hair. I took a step back, avoiding her, my voice turning cold. First, whether I can have a child or not has nothing to do with you. Second, the whole internet now knows what kind of perfectly good girl Chloe is. If you don't know, I can have my assistant send you those videos and evidence as well. You dare talk back? Martha trembled with rage. Those things were all faked by you. You are just jealous. Let me tell you, Stella, our family recognizes the child in Chloe's belly. You, who takes up space but produces nothing, need to divorce my son right now. Sign a postnuptial agreement and leave with nothing. Do not even think about taking a single penny from our family. Leave with nothing? I felt like I had just heard the biggest joke in the world. I looked at the unreasonable, hysterical old woman in front of me. I felt no anger, only a trace of sorrow. It was in this exact family environment that Carter grew up to be the selfish, greedy, irresponsible man he was today. Divorce is absolutely happening, I said lightly. As for the assets, I think you might be mistaken about something. I walked around her, stopping in front of the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the bustling Manhattan CBD. I pointed outside. This building you are looking at, the Vertex Technologies Tower, the car your son currently drives, the mansion he lives in, and every single penny in his bank account, it all has the last name Vanguard, not Hayes. Martha froze for a second, then immediately started cursing again. Bullshit. My son earned all of that with his own skills. What does it have to do with a freeloader like you? Stop flattering yourself. It seemed reasoning with her was impossible. I sighed, walked back to my desk, and didn't argue further. Instead, I picked up a remote control and pressed a button for the office's hidden projector. On the opposite wall, a massive screen slowly descended. Since you believe in your son so much, and you are so looking forward to your unborn grandson, let me show you something you might be interested in. My tone was calm, but a flash of cold pity crossed my eyes. I knew the upcoming footage would utterly destroy every beautiful illusion this old woman held about her successful son and her impending grandson. This was the psychological warfare Carter had chosen to wage, so I would use his own methods to let him and his family taste what true devastation felt like. The projector beam cast a bright rectangle into the quiet office. A carefully edited video began to play. The footage was from a security camera blind spot in the underground parking garage of Vertex Technologies. The lighting was dim, but it clearly showed two figures leaning intimately against a black Mercedes van. It was Chloe and Carter's private driver, Tommy Blake. At first, Martha didn't understand. She just sneered impatiently. Why are you showing me this? It's just that slut and our driver. I said nothing. I simply hit play. Clear dialogue pumped through the office's top-tier surround sound system, word for word. It was Chloe's sickeningly sweet voice. Tommy, when do you think that idiot Carter is finally going to get crushed by that Vanguard bitch? I can't wait to go overseas with you. Driver Tommy Blake's voice carried a smug chuckle. Soon, baby, he's a dead man walking. He won't last much longer. Once he goes to prison, all that money he moved to Horizon Future Innovations becomes ours. Then you better hurry up, Chloe whined. My belly is getting bigger by the day. If we drag this out, he might notice something. Relax. I already looked into it. Carter has some issues down there. Married 3 years and no kids. He is dying for a son to solidify his status right now. Even if he suspects something, he would never dare investigate it. He is locked in as the sucker dad. Tommy sounded incredibly confident. Once we get the money, we'll buy a small island in the Bahamas and live like gods. Let that idiot Carter rot in a jail cell. The conversation abruptly ended. The office fell into a deathly silence. I turned to look at Martha. Her facial expression looked frozen. First confusion, then shock, and finally disbelief. She stared dead at the two still kissing on the projector screen. Her cloudy eyes filled with blood. No, this isn't real. Her lips began to tremble, her voice sounding like it was forcefully squeezed from her throat. You faked this. You hired voice actors. You're trying to trick me. I spoke mildly. Whether it is fake or not, you can go ask your son. This driver, Tommy Blake, is your son's most trusted friend from his hometown. He has been with him for 5 years. My words were the final straw that broke the back of her denial. Ah. Martha suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. She clutched her chest, the color draining instantly from her face. Her body went limp like a puddle of mud, collapsing to the floor. Martha. Startled, I rushed forward to support her. Her eyes were squeezed shut, her lips turning purple, her breathing extremely shallow. I immediately slammed the emergency call button on my desk and yelled to my assistant running in, "Call 911. Heart attack!" The office was instantly thrown into chaos. Just then, Carter pushed the door open and walked in. He had probably timed his arrival, assuming his mother had already subdued me, and came to reap the rewards. "Mom, how did it? You bitch!" His words caught in his throat when he saw the scene. He looked at his mother lying unconscious on the floor and me performing CPR. He was totally stunned. "Mom, what happened?" He charged forward, shoved me aside, and roared, "Stella Vanguard, what did you do to my mother?" I ignored his screaming and calmly directed my assistant in the emergency response. Soon the paramedics arrived, loaded Martha onto a stretcher, and rushed her to the hospital. Carter was about to follow them, but I stopped him. "Wait." My voice was ice cold. He turned around, glaring at me viciously. "What else do you want? If anything happens to my mom, I will end you. Whether she survives or not, I don't know." I walked up to him and tossed a flash drive against his chest. "But I know that after you watch this, you are going to be worse off than she is." Inside that flash drive was the full, uncut version of the video I had just shown. It included the glorious footage of Chloe and Tommy rolling in the sheets in a hotel room. Suspicious, Carter took the flash drive and plugged it into my laptop. I stood behind him, watching his back go from angry to shocked to violently shaking. When the video reached the end, and he heard Chloe say, "Let that idiot Carter rot in a jail cell," he violently stood up. He pushed back so hard that the expensive desk chair tipped over. He spun around. That once handsome face was now bulging with veins, his expression twisted like a demon from hell. His eyes were entirely bloodshot, looking as if they might bleed. "Ah!" He let out an unearthly roar, like a completely enraged beast. He slammed his fist onto the mahogany desk. "Bitch! Bitch!" He screamed frantically, sweeping all the files, the laptop, and the decorations off the desk onto the floor. The office was a disaster zone. After his outburst, it was as if all the energy had been drained from him. He stared at me with dead eyes. "The kid isn't mine," he muttered to himself. His mental world entirely collapsed in that moment. He always thought Chloe truly loved him. The child was his final bargaining chip. He never expected that from the very beginning. He was nothing more than a massive joke played in the palm of their hands. He lost. He lost his career, his love, his dignity, and his final lifeline for a comeback. He lost everything, beaten to an absolute pulp. Suddenly, as if remembering something, a terrifying, murderous glare erupted in his eyes. He charged out of the office. "Chloe, Tommy, I am going to kill you both." I didn't stop him. I always enjoyed watching dogs bite dogs. Rumor had it Carter ran to the hospital like a madman, finding Chloe in the OB/GYN wing waiting for a checkup. Ignoring the screams of everyone around, he unleashed a barrage of punches and kicks directly onto Chloe's stomach. Chloe miscarried on the spot, suffering massive hemorrhaging, and was rushed into emergency surgery. Carter was arrested at the scene by the police for felony assault. He had personally walked himself right through those iron gates he never wanted to step foot inside. After that, Carter was detained for assault. Though Chloe's injury assessment meant he avoided a maximum security sentence for attempted murder, he still spent 15 days in Rikers Island. For the outside world, 15 days was the blink of an eye. But for Carter, it felt as long as 15 centuries. When he walked out of jail and stood beneath the Vertex Technologies building once again, he found the entire world had changed. Internally, the company had undergone a massive purge under my command. The loyalists he had planted were either fired or transferred out of core positions. From top to bottom, Vertex Technologies had been completely branded with my name, Stella Vanguard. He tried to contact old partners, only to find his number blocked by everyone. He tried to go home, only to find the locks on his mansion changed. My bodyguard stood at the door, telling him coldly, "Miss Vanguard ordered that unauthorized personnel are not permitted inside." He was penniless. Everyone had abandoned him. He was like a stray dog with nowhere to go. His mother, Martha, survived the heart attack but suffered a massive stroke. She was paralyzed and lying in a hospital bed, barely able to speak. The astronomical medical bills weighed down on him like a mountain. After her miscarriage, Chloe completely turned against him. Not only did she press charges against him for assault, she teamed up with Tommy Blake to sue him for massive emotional distress and physical damages. In just half a month, Carter went from the golden boy of the sky to an absolute loser in the gutter. Yet, extreme despair did not make him reflect on his mistakes. Instead, it triggered the deepest madness and resentment within him. He blamed all his failures on me. He believed I had destroyed his life. Driven to a dead end, he made the most insane decision possible. He found an underground forge and created counterfeit copies of Vertex Technologies' corporate seals and executive signature stamps. Using his familiarity with the company, he infiltrated the R&D archives and stole the final, complete design code for the company's current and most commercially viable project, the Genesis AI chip. This code was Vertex Technologies' lifeblood. It was also Vanguard Enterprises' most important chess piece for dominating the future AI landscape. Armed with the code and the counterfeit stamps, Carter went that very night to meet the man he had always tried to flatter, the VP of Obsidian Capital, Vanguard's arch-rival, Victor Thorne. Victor Thorne was a smiling tiger, a ruthless old fox. He had long drooled over Vertex Technologies' core technology, but never dared to act due to Vanguard's massive backing. Now, Carter, an insider, was hand-delivering the corporate seals and the core code right to his door. To Victor, it was a gift from God. Inside a VIP room of a high-end private club, Victor looked at the haggard Carter, whose eyes gleamed with the madness of a starving wolf. Victor smiled in satisfaction. "Carter, are you sure this code is complete?" Victor took a sip of his bourbon, asking slowly. "Absolutely certain." Carter spoke urgently. "With this code, Obsidian Capital can bypass Vertex entirely and produce the Genesis chip yourselves. When that happens, the entire market pie belongs to us. And what do you want?" A flash of greed crossed Victor's eyes. "I don't want anything." Carter gritted his teeth, pronouncing every word clearly. "I just want you to help me destroy Stella Vanguard. Destroy Vertex Technologies. I want that woman to lose everything and beg on her knees at my feet." "Interesting." Victor laughed. "But just having the code isn't enough. Vertex Technologies is, after all, a Vanguard property. Going head-to-head with them will cause us losses. The best way is to turn Vertex into our own company." Saying that, he pulled out a pre-prepared contract. "This is an equity transfer agreement. As the legal representative, you will transfer 90% of the company's equity to us for the price of $1. In return, we will inject $1 billion to help you restructure the company and guarantee you your seat as CEO. As for Stella Vanguard, we will use professional methods to make her disappear permanently." Victor's tone was flat, but his words were laced with blood and cruelty. Carter looked at the contract. Without a moment's hesitation, he picked up a pen, signed his name on the legal representative line, and stamped it with the counterfeit corporate seal. In his mind, he had latched onto a leg much thicker than Vanguard Enterprises. His rebirth was imminent. The night he signed the contract, Carter couldn't wait. He used an unknown number to call me. The call connected. His suppressed, near-manic laughter came through the line. "Stella Vanguard. You didn't expect this, did you?" "I, Carter Hayes, am back." I said nothing, quietly listening. "You think knowing a few people at corporate and freezing my cards could kill me?" "You are too naive," he boasted triumphantly. "I've already linked up with Victor Thorne at Obsidian Capital. Starting tomorrow, Vertex Technologies belongs to Obsidian Capital, and I am still the king here. Your little tricks are nothing in the face of true capital. I am going to return everything you did to me 10 times, 100 times over. I am going to make you kneel on the floor and lick my shoes like a dog." His voice overflowed with the thrill of revenge. Listening to his arrogant screaming, I didn't get angry. Instead, I couldn't help but laugh. My laughter transmitted clearly through the phone to his ears. It was an extremely bright, yet extremely freezing laugh. Carter's laughter abruptly stopped. He asked, confused, "What are you laughing at?" I slowly stopped laughing, my voice as light as a feather, yet carrying the weight of a mountain. "I am laughing because you are at death's door, and you don't even realize it. Obsidian Capital? Victor Thorne? Carter, did you forget? I, Stella Vanguard, am the true king of this capitalist world." With that, I hung up the phone. A spectacular show was about to begin. The next morning, Vertex Technologies welcomed a group of uninvited guests. Victor Thorne, flanked by his legal and financial teams, aggressively marched into the company. Carter strutted beside him like a victorious rooster, his face practically glowing with the arrogance of a petty man achieving success. "Miss Vanguard, we meet again." Victor smiled thinly at me, tossing a document onto my desk. According to this legally binding equity transfer agreement, Obsidian Capital is now the largest shareholder of Vertex Technologies. Representing the new board of directors, I am officially notifying you that you are fired. Please pack your personal belongings and leave within the hour. Carter stepped forward, looking down at me, using a tone of charity. "Stella, for the sake of our past marriage, if you get on your knees and beg me right now, I might consider keeping you around as a janitor." I looked at their synchronized performance without a single trace of panic on my face. I even picked up the so-called agreement and read it carefully. My calmness surprised both Victor and Carter. "What, don't believe it?" Carter thought I was scared stupid. He sneered. It's in black and white. It has the corporate seal and my legal signature. This carries absolute legal authority. I finished reading the agreement, looked up, and gave them a smile that made their hearts inexplicably skip a beat. I've read the agreement. The stamp is real. The signature is also real. A victorious smile bloomed on Carter's face. However, my next sentence froze that smile instantly. It is just a shame that from the moment it was signed, this agreement was nothing but a piece of scrap paper. What do you mean? Victor's brow furrowed. I didn't answer him directly. Instead, I pressed the intercom on my desk. Have Robert from legal and Mr. Davis, the corporate inspector from headquarters, come up. Soon, a lawyer wearing gold-rimmed glasses and a stern-faced man in a black suit entered the office. Explain it to Mr. Thorne and Mr. Hayes, I ordered lightly. Robert cleared his throat, pulling out a document and handing it to Victor. Mr. Thorne, hello. According to the latest regulations from Vanguard Enterprises headquarters, as well as the corporate bylaws of Vertex Technologies, any major matter involving equity changes or core asset transfers requires not only the signature and stamp of the legal representative, but it must also have the co-signature of the headquarters-appointed inspector with veto power. Otherwise, it is invalid. This is Mr. Davis, the inspector assigned by corporate. Tell me, has Mr. Davis signed this agreement? Victor's face instantly turned incredibly ugly. He stared dead at the agreement. Aside from Carter's signature, there was indeed no second signature. Veto power? I've never heard of that, Carter screamed. You are just making this up to trick us. I smiled, turning my laptop screen toward them. On the screen was the Vanguard Enterprises internal OA system. A Supreme-level red-header document issued by the chairman's office half a month ago was clearly displayed. The issue date was exactly the day after Carter was kicked out of the company. Carter looked at that regulation and his brain short-circuited. In his wildest dreams, he never imagined that I had already laid down an inescapable net in places he couldn't even see. He thought he had a royal flush, completely unaware that I was the one who wrote the rules of the game. Victor was a veteran of the business world, after all. He quickly calmed down and gave a cold huff. Well played, Miss Vanguard. What ruthless tactics. But even if this equity agreement is temporarily invalid, we still hold the core code for the Genesis AI chip. At worst, we just start our own shop. By then, Vertex Technologies without its core tech will just be an empty shell anyway. That was his true trump card. The core code. The smile on my face deepened. Mr. Thorne, are you certain you got the complete core code? Of course. Carter immediately jumped in. I pulled it out of the R&D archives with my own hands. It is absolutely the latest, complete version. Is it? I stood up leisurely, walked over to the keypad safe in the office, punched in the code, and opened it. I pulled out a tiny silver flash drive. What a coincidence. The final piece of the Genesis chip, which is also the most vital AI driver module, was never entered into the company's archive system due to being a top-tier corporate secret. It has always been kept personally by me. I dangled the flash drive in my hand, as if showing off a rare treasure. In other words, what you spent so much effort stealing is nothing more than a pile of soulless, unrunnable garbage code. My words were like an atomic bomb detonating in Victor and Carter's brains. The blood drained cleanly from their faces in an instant. Victor's face could no longer be described as just ugly. It was a bruised purple, a mix of shock, rage, and the humiliation of being played for a fool. He stared dead at the flash drive in my hand, his eyes practically shooting fire. Impossible. You are bluffing, he snapped, but a barely detectable tremor betrayed his voice. Carter acted like he had gone mad, pointing at me and screaming, You're lying! Stella Vanguard, you are a woman who doesn't know anything about tech. How could you be keeping the core code? That thing has to be on the company servers. Oh, really? I casually plugged the flash drive into the laptop and cast a video onto the projector screen. In the video was Vertex Technologies' Chief Technology Officer. Sitting in his office, he looked into the camera and said sternly, I guarantee with my personal reputation and professional ethics, the final core algorithmic module of the Genesis chip project has been physically isolated and securely held by Miss Vanguard since the day development concluded. All related code currently stored on the company servers is an incomplete version missing this module. It possesses absolutely no independent commercial application value. The video ended. The office fell into a deathly silence. This was another layer of insurance I had recorded long ago. Victor's body swayed, as if all his strength had been drained out of him in a split second. He leaned against the desk just to stay standing. He knew he had lost. He had meticulously planned a corporate raid, only to realize that from beginning to end, he was just a chess piece on my board. Not only did he gain absolutely nothing, but he also exposed Obsidian Capital's ambitions. As for Carter, he collapsed onto the floor like an inmate who had just been handed a death sentence. His final hope, his only bargaining chip to negotiate with Victor, was actually a pile of worthless garbage. He was finished. This time, it was true eternal damnation. Miss Vanguard. Victor was, after all, a man who had seen massive storms. He forced a smile that looked worse than a crying face. It seems our Obsidian Capital made an error in judgment this time. A misunderstanding. It is all a misunderstanding. Since that is the case, we will not bother you any longer. Saying that, he prepared to lead his men away in disgrace. Stop. My icy voice rang out behind him. Mr. Thorne, didn't you forget something? Victor paused, turning around to look at me in confusion. I picked up the thick stack of documents they had brought in, the ones intended to acquire Vertex Technologies, and weighed them lightly in my hand. You storm into my office today with a forged contract attempting to seize my company's assets, threatening and intimidating me personally. And you think you can just walk away by calling it a misunderstanding? My gaze slowly swept across everyone in the room, finally landing on Victor's rigid face. I have never been a person who likes to take a loss. Obsidian Capital has to leave something behind as compensation, right? What do you want? Victor's eyes flashed with caution. I smiled, the smile carrying a trace of bloodthirsty chill. I heard Obsidian Capital is currently bidding for the prime real estate in the Silicon Alley Tech Park to build a new R&D center, correct? Victor's heart sank. That plot of land was the core of Obsidian Capital's strategic layout for the next 5 years. They had prepared for 6 months, pouring immense manpower and capital into it. They were determined to win. And I also heard that to secure this land, you didn't hesitate to use some less than honorable methods to bribe a few key officials. My voice dropped low, sounding like the whispers of a devil, yet it transmitted clearly into Victor's ears. His face instantly turned completely white. These things originally had nothing to do with me, I said leisurely, toying with the flash drive in my hand. But if I happen to hand over everything you did in my office today, along with some little pieces of evidence I accidentally obtained regarding your bidding process, to the federal investigators and the media, guess what would happen? Are you threatening me? Victor's voice pitched up. No, it is not a threat. I shook my head, correcting him. It is a trade. I walked up to him and gently placed the flash drive on the desk in front of him. It is very simple. First, Obsidian Capital immediately withdraws from the Silicon Alley bidding. Second, you destroy every single document you hold regarding Vertex Technologies. Third, and most importantly, my gaze shifted to Carter, who was slumped on the floor. Take this corporate thief and all evidence of your dirty deals with him, and hand it over to the FBI. Do these 3 things, and I will pretend today never happened. Otherwise, I didn't finish the sentence. But the unspoken threat instilled far more terror in Victor than any words could. He stared dead at me, large drops of cold sweat rolling down his forehead. He knew I was not joking. The ruthless methods and deep scheming of this young, beautiful woman far exceeded his imagination. Today, he had kicked an absolute steel plate. After a long time, like a deflated balloon, his entire aura collapsed. He squeezed a few words through his teeth. Fine, I agree. With that, he didn't even cast a glance at Carter on the floor. He turned and fled my office with his men in a panic, like a pack of stray dogs with their tails between their legs. And Carter, the pathetic worm who had been ruthlessly abandoned by his final backer without a second thought, remained slumped on the floor. His eyes were lifeless, his mouth muttering, "It's over. It's all over." I looked down at him, my eyes devoid of a single ounce of pity. Carter, now it is time for us to settle our final tab. Victor Thorne was highly efficient. Or rather, I had scared the soul out of him, and he didn't dare delay for a second. That very afternoon, Obsidian Capital issued a public statement announcing that due to strategic adjustments, they were officially withdrawing from the Silicon Alley Tech Park bidding. This news sent shockwaves through the industry. Immediately after, an anonymous whistleblower file, complete with all the evidence of Carter forging corporate seals and stealing trade secrets, was delivered to the desk of the FBI's white-collar crime division. The file detailed exactly how Obsidian Capital had been deceived by Carter, nearly causing them massive investment losses. Victor, that old fox, had washed himself entirely clean, dumping the entire black pot onto Carter's head alone. The authorities arrived at Vertex Technologies very quickly. When the cold handcuffs clicked around Carter's wrists, it was as if he finally woke from a dream. He began to struggle and roar frantically. "It wasn't me. It was Victor Thorne. He ordered me to do it. Why are you arresting me? Go arrest him." However, his defenses were pale and powerless in the face of a mountain of ironclad evidence. He was dragged out of the office, flanked by 2 agents. As he passed me, he suddenly stopped, turned his head, and stared at me with eyes laced with pure poison. "Stella Vanguard, you poisonous bitch. You will die a horrible death. Even as a ghost, I won't let you off." I looked at his face, twisted by madness, and simply said mildly, "You pushed open the gates of hell with your own 2 hands. Enjoy it." Carter was taken away. The war he provoked in a desperate attempt to flip the board ended in his own total annihilation. However, things did not end there. Victor Thorne might have temporarily extricated himself, but his attempt to swallow Vertex Technologies had crossed my bottom line. It also crossed the ultimate red line of Vanguard Enterprises. My father, Richard Vanguard, was never a man who could be bullied and just laugh it off. The day after Carter was taken away, I received a call from my father. His voice was as steady as ever, but carried an imperceptible icy chill. "Stella, that Thorne guy and Obsidian Capital. How do you want to handle them?" "Dad, I want to handle this myself," I replied. "Good. Whatever resources you need, just ask. Remember, the Vanguard family never starts trouble, but we never fear it either." Hanging up, a cold light flashed in my eyes. Victor Thorne thought he could sacrifice a pawn to save the king and rest easy. He severely underestimated Stella Vanguard. Not only was I going to make him spit out everything he had eaten, I was going to make him, along with the Obsidian Capital behind him, pay a devastating price for their greed. I ordered my legal team to secretly begin gathering evidence of all illegal operations Obsidian Capital had engaged in over the years, particularly several overseas investment projects managed by Victor. I knew his fatal weak point was hidden right there, and while I was intensively laying out my network, another fantastic show quietly began. After being brutally extorted by me, Victor felt increasingly frustrated the more he thought about it. Not daring to come after me directly, he vented all his fury onto Carter, the culprit who cost him both his troops and his money. Even though Carter was already in federal custody, Victor used his connections to pass a message inside. Thus, Carter's prison nightmare began early. Every single day, he was given special treatment by his cellmates for various reasons. At best, he was insulted and beaten. At worst, he was forced to clean everyone's toilets and eat their leftover scraps. The once high and mighty CEO was reduced to the lowest scum in that small, predator-filled space, someone anyone could step on. What made him even more desperate was that his mother, Martha, having accumulated massive unpaid medical bills, was kicked out by the hospital. Meanwhile, Chloe, after taking a hush-money payout, completely vanished with the driver Tommy Blake. Carter had truly become a man with nothing and no one. Under the dual torture of physical abuse and mental breakdown, his psychological defenses quickly collapsed. Just to have a slightly better life inside, and to take revenge on the treacherous Victor Thorne, he proactively offered a deal to the authorities. He wanted to turn state's evidence. He wanted to confess everything he knew about the secrets of Victor Thorne and Obsidian Capital. This included how they illegally transferred funds through underground banking syndicates, how they set up offshore shell companies to launder money and evade taxes, and even a cold case from years ago where Victor maliciously shorted a competitor's stock and spread fake news, driving the rival founder to bankruptcy and suicide. Carter had actively sought out and learned these dark secrets of Obsidian Capital when he collaborated with Victor, intending to use them as a pledge of loyalty for his future rapid ascent. He originally thought these secrets would be his ticket to power. He never expected they would become the final bomb he used for mutual destruction with his enemy. When federal investigators followed the trail provided by Carter and uncovered the massive, hidden money laundering network of Obsidian Capital, everyone was shocked. The sheer amount of money involved and the breadth of personnel implicated vastly exceeded anyone's imagination. An inescapable net quietly descended upon Obsidian Capital. And Victor Thorne, the old fox who thought himself brilliantly clever, had no idea that the fire he personally ignited was about to burn him to ashes. When the Financial Crimes Task Force stormed the Obsidian Capital headquarters with weapons drawn, sealing all ledgers and servers, Victor was sitting in his luxurious executive suite overlooking the Manhattan skyline, leisurely sipping a glass of Pappy Van Winkle bourbon. He thought that by sacrificing Carter, the matter had drawn to a close. He never in his wildest dreams imagined that Carter, the dog he casually discarded, would bite him back right before death and bite him directly on the jugular. When the cold handcuffs snapped around the wrist, still holding the crystal glass, he was completely stunned. "What are you doing? Do you know who I am?" he roared, losing all composure, his usual refined and calm disguise torn to shreds. The response he received was the emotionless face of the lead investigator and a sternly worded arrest warrant. For suspected massive money laundering, financial fraud, malicious market manipulation, and multiple major economic crimes, Victor Thorne, vice president of Obsidian Capital, is hereby placed under arrest. When the news broke, the entire financial sector shuddered. Obsidian Capital's stock price plummeted the moment the market opened that afternoon, triggering trading halts 3 times within a single hour. Billions of dollars in market value evaporated instantly. Countless investors lost everything. And this was only the beginning. As the investigation deepened, more and more internal corruption within Obsidian Capital was dragged into the light. Tax evasion, illegal lending, insider trading, every single revelation was shocking. Obsidian Capital was rotten to the core. Ultimately, regulatory agencies issued the severest penalties, indefinitely revoking Obsidian Capital's financial licenses and imposing record-breaking fines. The financial leviathan that once summoned wind and rain in the capital markets collapsed with a resounding crash within a matter of days, turning to ruins. And I, from beginning to end, was just a quiet spectator. I didn't use any of the Vanguard family's connections, nor did I pressure any government department. I merely flapped a butterfly's wings gently before the storm arrived. The rest was their own self-destruction. This is the cruelest yet fairest rule of the capitalist world. The methods you use to extract profit will eventually consume you in kind. Victor Thorne's downfall also made Carter's case much simpler. As the key tainted witness in the case, Carter received leniency in his sentencing due to his major contributions. However, convicted of multiple counts of corporate embezzlement, theft of trade secrets, and forgery of corporate seals, his sentences were served consecutively. He was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. A once promising young talent would spend the 15 most valuable years of his life behind high walls, and that was not the end. Beyond criminal liability, he had to bear the massive civil damages he caused to me and to Vertex Technologies. It was an astronomical figure he couldn't repay even if he lived 100 lifetimes. I didn't attend the court on the day of the sentencing. Robert Pierce brought back the final result for me. "It is all over, Miss Vanguard," Robert said, placing a copy of the judgment on my desk, his tone carrying a sigh. "Carter Hayes, Victor Thorne, Obsidian Capital. The people and things that tried to topple you are now dust in history." I looked at the judgment. I felt no great joy, nor the thrill of revenge, only the calm after the dust settles. "Thank you, Robert. You have worked hard." I stood up and gave a slight bow. "It was my duty," Robert smiled. "To be honest, in my 30 years of practice, this is the most exhilarating battle I have ever fought. Your calmness, your decisiveness, your methods. It reminded me of your father when he was young. No, even better than him back then." "You flatter me," I smiled faintly. After seeing Robert out, I stood alone in the spacious office for a long time. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the bustling city below. The glow of the setting sun dyed the clouds on the horizon a brilliant gold. Was it really all over? No. For Carter and Victor, it was over. But for me, for Vertex Technologies, and for the entire Vanguard Enterprises, this was just a new beginning. I cleared out the internal parasites and beat back the external wolves. Next, my job was to steer this giant ship through the storm, set sail once more, and head toward a broader, more turbulent ocean. The day before Carter was officially transferred to federal prison to serve his sentence, I received a call from the detention center. It was Carter. He begged to see me one last time before he left. I was silent for a moment, but ultimately agreed. Not out of old affection and not out of pity. I simply wanted to draw the most definitive, final period on this absurd 3-year marriage. In the freezing visitation room, separated by thick, bulletproof glass, I saw Carter once again. He wore a gray prison uniform, his head shaved in a buzz cut. His face was covered in exhaustion and the weathering of time. In just a few months, he looked as if he had aged 20 years. The high-spirited arrogance of the past was completely gone, leaving only a pair of hollow, numb eyes. Upon seeing me, a faint ripple finally stirred in those dead eyes. He picked up the telephone receiver, his voice as scratchy as sandpaper. "You came. I came." I picked up the receiver on my side, replying calmly. "Heh." He suddenly chuckled low, his laugh full of self-mockery and desolation. "I was so stupid. I only just realized what kind of woman I married back then." "You weren't stupid." I looked at him, correcting him word by word. "You were greedy." My words were like a sharp knife, piercing his most fragile nerve. The smile on his face froze. "I was greedy?" He reacted like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, his voice spiking. "Stella Vanguard, on what grounds do you say I was greedy? I worked hard for so many years. I built Vertex from an unknown little startup to where it is today. Do you know how much blood and sweat I poured in? How many sleepless nights I endured? I just wanted to take back a little of what rightfully belonged to me. Is that a crime? Belonged to you? I sneered. Carter, did you forget who founded Vertex Technologies? The ground you stand on, every breath of air you take, everything you own. Who gave it to you? Without my father, without Vanguard Enterprises, you, Carter Hayes, would still just be a low-level desk jockey in some office building, bowing and scraping for a few $1,000s a month. My words were merciless, ripping his pathetic ego to shreds. He choked, unable to speak, his face turning a bruised liver color. After a long while, like a deflated balloon, he slumped back into his chair, muttering to himself, "Yeah, I forgot. I almost forgot. I am just a freeloader who climbed the ladder using my wife's family." He suddenly looked up, staring at me with a pleading gaze. "Stella, for the sake of our 3 years of marriage, help me one last time, please. Go find your father. Beg him. Ask him to use his connections to reduce my sentence. I don't want to spend 15 years in prison. I am begging you." He was actually still dreaming of utilizing that tiny bit of affection between us, affection he had personally buried. I looked at him, suddenly feeling deeply disgusted. Affection? Carter, from the moment you stood in your office and let your mistress slap me across the face, any affection between us was completely erased. As for a sentence reduction, that is a forgiveness you are profoundly unworthy of. My words were a bucket of ice water, completely extinguishing the final spark of hope in his heart. He stared at me blankly, the light in his eyes dying out inch by inch. Visitation time was over. I stood up, ready to leave. Just as I turned around, he suddenly remembered something. He slammed his hands against the glass, screaming with a hoarse voice. "Wait! Stella! I have one more question. Did you ever truly love me?" I stopped walking. I didn't turn around. I was silent for a long time. So long that the hopeful look in Carter's eyes slowly turned to despair. Then I slowly spoke, my voice as light as a sigh. "The Carter Hayes I loved died the moment I decided to hide my identity and marry you. He died under your ambition, your greed, and your pathetic, fragile ego." With that, I didn't pause for another second. I walked straight out of that oppressive, despair-filled visitation room. Behind me came Carter's heart-wrenching, agonizing wail. It sounded like a dying beast, filled with endless regret and agony. But what did that have to do with me? Walking out of the detention center, the sun was shining beautifully. I raised my head, squinting at the clear blue sky, feeling as though I had just achieved a long-overdue rebirth. After Carter was officially transferred to federal prison, and the remains of Obsidian Capital were carved up cleanly by the major financial syndicates, the business storm that swept the city finally drew to a close. However, everyone knew this was merely surface-level peace. A higher-level, ultimate reckoning was quietly brewing. Half a month later, the highest-tier National Corporate Compliance and Risk Management Arbitration Summit of the year was grandly held at the Manhattan Waterfront Conference Center. In attendance were top entrepreneurs, financial titans, and top leaders of regulatory agencies from across the country. The venue was packed, the atmosphere solemn and majestic. I, acting as the representative for Vanguard Enterprises, sat in the dead center of the front row. The first half of the summit consisted of standard agenda items and reports, until the host, using an unusually grave tone, announced, "Next, we will enter the special agenda of this summit, an in-depth analysis and industry warning regarding the recent major criminal case of Obsidian Capital." The lights in the hall dimmed. Only the spotlight on the main stage remained bright. 2 federal marshals escorted a man wearing an orange prison uniform, his wrists and ankles in chains, slowly walking him up to the side of the main stage. The man looked haggard, his eyes numb. It was Carter Hayes. He was being used as a living negative example, escorted into this highest-level commercial tribunal to face a public execution before the entire industry. Dozens of cameras below aimed at him, flashes popping non-stop, recording his most pathetic, humiliating moment. Carter kept his head down, not daring to look at anyone in the audience. His body trembled slightly. I couldn't tell if it was out of fear or out of shame. Just then, a steady, powerful voice echoed from the center of the main stage. "Good afternoon, everyone." Every eye in the room focused on the center of the stage, on the keynote speaker who had remained silent until now. He was a man in his 60s, but still radiating vigor and a terrifying aura. He wore a bespoke, immaculately tailored 3-piece suit, his hair combed flawlessly, his eyes so sharp they seemed able to pierce through anything. He was my father, the supreme chairman of Vanguard Enterprises, Richard Vanguard. Hearing that voice, Carter's head snapped up. When he saw the face of the man on stage, he froze as if struck by a spell. His mouth opened wider and wider, his eyes filling with extreme, absolute disbelief. "Chairman Vanguard?" he muttered. Then, as if grasping at his final straw, he threw himself out of his chair. Ignoring the marshals trying to restrain him, he dropped to his knees, frantically kowtowing toward the center of the stage. Father-in-law! Father-in-law! Save me! For Stella's sake, please save me! His shrill, pathetic wails echoed through the solemn hall, sounding incredibly jarring and laughable. The words father-in-law elicited suppressed gasps of shock from the guests who didn't know the truth. Everyone's eyes began darting back and forth between me and Richard Vanguard on the stage. I sat completely expressionless in my seat. On the stage, my father slowly stood up. He looked down from above at the man begging like a dog on the floor, his eyes devoid of a single ripple of emotion. He picked up the microphone, his voice transmitting clearly through the sound system into everyone's ears. First of all, let me correct you on one point. I, Richard Vanguard, am not your father-in-law. His voice was freezing and absolute. Like a sharp sword, it severed Carter's final illusion. Carter collapsed completely onto the floor, waking up from his pipe dream, his face the color of death. My father's gaze slowly moved away from him, sweeping across the audience, finally landing on me. His eyes carried a trace of relief and pride that only I could read. Today, taking advantage of this opportunity, I have a more important matter to announce to everyone. He paused, his voice raising sharply, carrying an unquestionable majesty. Starting today, I, Richard Vanguard, officially resign from all executive positions at Vanguard Enterprises. This news was a massive bombshell detonating in the hall. Everyone was shocked speechless by the sudden announcement. My father, under the gaze of everyone present, slowly extended a hand toward me. Now, I officially hand over the supreme scepter of Vanguard Enterprises to my daughter, and the sole legal heir of the conglomerate, Stella Vanguard. At that moment, every spotlight in the hall converged on me. Under the gaze of thousands, I slowly stood up. Step by step, steady and composed, I walked onto the main stage that represented supreme power and wealth. I walked to my father's side and took the microphone, the symbol of the highest power in a business empire, from his hands. I, Stella Vanguard, today, right now, under the witness of everyone here, officially take the crown. When I stood in the center of the stage, when my voice transmitted through the microphone in my hand, I knew that the era of Carter Hayes was permanently over, and the era belonging to Stella Vanguard had just begun. Below the stage was dead silence. Everyone was stunned beyond words by this sudden transfer of power. They looked at me, this young woman who, just a short time ago, was merely rumored to be the mysterious Vanguard heiress now legitimately standing at the absolute peak of power. And that pathetic prisoner slumped on the side of the stage, Carter, stared at me with eyes of total despair. He finally understood. From beginning to end, all his pride, all his calculations, all his ambitions, in front of me, were nothing but an arrogant, massive joke. He thought he had married a helpless orphan, never expecting he had brought home the queen of a business empire. The total inversion of reality brought an extreme agony of regret and despair that tortured him far worse than any physical punishment ever could. I didn't even cast him a glance. My calm gaze swept across everyone in the audience. Then I spoke. My voice was clear and powerful. Ladies and gentlemen, regarding Mr. Carter Hayes and the case of Obsidian Capital, the law has already delivered its most just ruling. Standing here today, I do not wish to reiterate their crimes. I simply want to use my status as the new CEO of Vanguard Enterprises to reaffirm our 3 core principles to the industry. First, integrity. Vanguard Enterprises will always welcome honest, reliable partners. But toward any individual or enterprise attempting to deceive, betray, or damage our interests, we will respond with the severest and most absolute retaliation. We will show no mercy. Second, rules. The market has its rules, and Vanguard has its bottom lines. To anyone attempting to challenge our bottom lines and break market rules, please remember, we are not merely followers of the rules. Sometimes, we are the ones who write them. Third, and most importantly, strength. Vanguard Enterprises reached where it is today not by opportunism or dirty tricks. We rely on the absolute, irreplaceable core strength we possess in every vital sector. My words landed with heavy impact. They were a summary of the past and a declaration of the future. Having said that, I placed the microphone back onto its stand. Only then did I slowly turn around, casting my gaze toward the man already swallowed by despair. I walked up to him, looking down at him. Carter, as my first executive order as CEO, I announced that Vanguard Enterprises' legal department will officially file a civil lawsuit against you. We will recover all financial losses caused to Vertex Technologies by your embezzlement and theft of corporate secrets. Simultaneously, We will recover all marital assets you maliciously transferred during our marriage. According to initial estimates by our lawyers, that figure is roughly $700 million. In other words, not only will you spend the next 15 years in federal prison, but upon your release, you will carry a debt of $700 million. You, your family, and your descendants will never see the light of day again. With every word I spoke, Carter's face grew a shade whiter. When I finished the final word, his face had absolutely no blood left in it, looking like a crumpled piece of white paper. $700 million. That number was an insurmountable Everest that completely crushed his final shred of mental willpower. He was finished. His life was over, permanently. And after pronouncing his death sentence, I thought of the other person. I took out my phone and dialed Robert. Robert, how is the case against Chloe Benson proceeding? Robert's steady voice came through the line. Very smoothly, Miss Vanguard. Based on the evidence we submitted, Chloe is facing multiple charges, including massive corporate bribery, extortion, and financial fraud. Initial estimates place her sentence at no less than 10 years. 10 years. The best years of a woman's youth would be spent behind cold iron bars. The mansions, luxury cars, and designer goods she once lusted after would all turn to bubbles. Waiting for her was only a prison uniform and endless regret. Rumor had it her mental state was highly unstable in custody. She would frequently cry and scream, claiming she was framed, that Carter tricked her. But no one cared anymore. One got 15 years. The other got 10 years. These two people, who once nearly turned my world upside down and brought me endless pain and humiliation, finally paid the price they deserved for their greed, betrayal, and venom. The law gave them their final judgment, and I gave them the shackles that ensured they would never rise again. When Carter was dragged out of the conference hall by the marshals, he was like a puddle of boneless mud. Unintelligible sounds slipped from his mouth. His eyes were empty black holes swallowing all light. I didn't look at him again. To me, he was already a dead man with no relation to my life. After the summit ended, I was swarmed by countless reporters and entrepreneurs. Miss Vanguard, what is Vanguard Enterprises' strategic direction after you take over as CEO? Miss Vanguard, what are your thoughts on the Obsidian Capital incident? Miss Vanguard, taking control of such a massive business empire at such a young age, do you feel confident? I smiled, answering every question with unhurried poise. My speech, my manners, my aura, all traces of the submissive housewife were completely gone. In her place was a confident, decisive queen in absolute control. By the time I finished dealing with everything and returned home, it was late into the night. I kicked off my high heels, walked barefoot to the wine cabinet, and poured myself a glass of vintage red wine. Holding the glass, I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the city skyline glittering like a river of stars. My heart was filled with an unprecedented peace. Suddenly, my personal phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but answered it anyway. A frail, elderly woman's voice came through the line. Stella? Is that you? It was Martha Hayes, my former mother-in-law. It is me. My voice was very cold. Stella, please, let Carter go. She sobbed brokenly into the phone. He knows he was wrong. He really knows he was wrong. He is still young. He can't spend his whole life in prison. He is my only son. He is my only son. He's the last of the Hayes line. I know we wronged you. I was so blind. I didn't realize who I was dealing with. I'm begging you on my hands and knees right now. I will do absolutely anything for you. Please, have mercy. Spare him just this once. I downed the red wine in my glass in one gulp. Then, I slowly spoke. My voice was not loud, but carried an unquestionable finality. Martha, I think you have mistaken a few things. First, it was not me who put your son in prison. It was the law. Second, it was not me who drove him to this point. It was your endless greed and stupidity. Third, and most importantly, I paused, speaking word by word. In this world, not every I am sorry earns an it is okay. You people do not deserve my forgiveness. With that, I didn't give her another chance to speak. I hung up the phone and permanently added the number to my block list. To those who had deeply hurt me, I would never give them another opportunity to disturb my life. I tossed the phone onto the sofa. Then, I remembered one last thing. It was something I found when Carter was officially arrested, and I had my assistant clear out his belongings from the house we shared. It was a photograph locked inside a safe hidden deep in his study. The photo was of a young, smiling girl. That girl was not me, nor was she Chloe. She was Carter's college sweetheart. Rumor had it that the girl dumped Carter mercilessly on a rainy night because she despised him for being poor and having no background. She threw herself into the arms of a trust fund kid, and that trust fund kid drove a red Ferrari. The ring that girl loved to wear the most was a Cartier diamond ring. In that moment, I finally understood everything. So, in Carter Hayes' eyes, Stella Vanguard was never unique. I was merely a tool he used to prove himself to the woman who abandoned him. A substitute he used to satisfy his trampled ego. He bought me things not because I liked them, but because that woman liked them. The sweet nothings he whispered to me were probably just things he never got the chance to say to her. How laughable, how pathetic. The woman most qualified in the whole world to possess a unique, one-of-a-kind love, spent 3 whole years playing a stand-in for a man I built up with my own hands. I walked into the study, took out that photograph, walked over to the fireplace, and threw it into the roaring flames. Watching that smiling face curl, blacken, and turn to ash in the fire, it felt as though the Stella Vanguard who had once loved him so humbly had turned to ash right along with it. From now on, the wife of Carter Hayes no longer existed in this world. There was only the Queen of Vanguard Enterprises, Stella Vanguard. 1 year later, the massive floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor of the Vanguard Enterprises headquarters building took in the entire prosperity of Manhattan. I sat behind the massive executive desk, my fingers lightly tracing the latest global economic trend charts. On the desk sat a $100 billion acquisition proposal for an old-money European semiconductor company. Across from me sat several core executives of the conglomerate. They sat up straight, intensely focused, listening to my strategic deployment. Therefore, my decision is to scrap Plan B and immediately execute Plan A. We will launch a hostile takeover bid for European tech at a 30% premium. We don't just want their technology, we want their entire market. My voice was calm and decisive. But Miss Vanguard, the CFO voiced his concern. A 30% premium will put immense pressure on our cash flow. Furthermore, their board of directors might not agree. I have already settled the cash flow issue with the Swiss banks. They will provide us with a €30 billion unsecured line of credit. I spoke mildly. As for their board of directors, whether they agree or not doesn't matter, because I have already quietly acquired 40% of their outstanding shares on the open market. This acquisition was never a negotiation to begin with. It is a notification. As my words fell, the entire conference room went silent. All the executives looked at me with eyes bordering on worship. They knew that the surprisingly young woman sitting before them possessed not only iron-fisted, lightning-fast methods, but also the terrifying strategic ability to control the battlefield from thousands of miles away. Over the past year, using one textbook-perfect corporate battle after another, I proved to the world who the true king of this era was. Under my direct leadership, Vertex Technologies not only stepped out of Carter's shadow but was reborn in fire. The Genesis chip launched successfully, shattering years of foreign technological monopolies to become a pillar of the nation's industry. The company's market value was 10 times what it was a year ago, and my name, Stella Vanguard, became a commercial legend of this era that could not be ignored. The meeting adjourned, and the executives respectfully filed out. I rubbed my slightly aching temples. My assistant walked in carrying a cup of freshly brewed Blue Mountain coffee. "Miss Vanguard, take a break." I nodded and took the coffee. The assistant handed me a tablet. "Miss Vanguard, here is the update you requested on those individuals." I swiped the screen. On it were the latest updates regarding Carter Hayes, Martha Hayes, and Chloe Benson. In prison because of good behavior, Carter had been transferred to the manufacturing wing to stamp out license plates. Rumor had it he had to run the heavy machinery for 12 hours straight every day just to earn a meager, barely edible dinner. After her stroke, Martha had been sent back to a rural trailer park. With no money for treatment and no one to care for her, she lay in bed all day, incontinent, surviving only on the occasional charity of neighbors. As for Chloe, she suffered a mental breakdown in prison. She attempted to attack a guard and was thrown into solitary confinement. I heard that every day in that tiny, windowless room, she would frantically scream the name Stella Vanguard. Looking at these people who once created massive waves in my life, now living lives worse than insects, I felt not a single ripple in my heart. I simply swiped their names away, then handed the tablet back to my assistant. "You don't need to report on these people anymore. They no longer deserve a single second of my time." "Yes, Miss Vanguard." The assistant stepped out. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window holding my coffee. The sunlight poured through the glass onto my face, warm and bright. Looking down at the empire I had conquered with my own hands, I suddenly felt a trace of loneliness. Just then, there was a knock on the office door. A tall, elegant man walked in. He wore a gentle smile on his face. "Stella, congratulations on fighting another beautiful war." The newcomer was the only man over the past year who dared to call me by my first name. He was also the ruler of the only business empire capable of standing toe-to-toe with Vanguard Enterprises, Julian Vance, CEO of Apex Holdings. He was my competitor. And my only confidant. Why are you here? I was a little surprised. I came to ask you a question. He walked up to my side, standing shoulder to shoulder with me, looking out at the view. After conquering the entire world, do you have any interest in conquering another equally interesting soul? His eyes sparkled with a light I could perfectly read. It was the appreciation of a worthy adversary. It was also an evenly matched admiration. I looked at him and didn't speak. After a long while, I smiled. I smiled brighter than the sunlight outside the window. I didn't answer him. Instead, I raised the coffee cup in my hand, giving a slight toast toward the endless empire stretching out before me. An inner monologue, sealed away for a long time, slowly flowed through my mind. True confidence always comes from your own irreplaceable strength. When you yourself become a towering mountain, you will naturally meet the person capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with you, watching the wind and clouds rise together. As for those passers-by who only wanted to enjoy the shade at the foot of your mountain, or even tried to steal the dirt from your foundation, they will ultimately be left far behind, turning into dust so insignificant you won't even bother to look back. Outside the window, the sky was high and the clouds were light. The stars shone with infinite brilliance. My story has only just begun.